So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to the session on how to score 760 on the GMAT. My name is Rajat Sudana. I'm one of the co-founders of e-GMAT, and I'm going to be your main host today. Supporting me in this webinar, we have Sandeep, who's a GMAT strategy expert. He's actually been a very long time GMAT strategy expert, and he's going to be our co-host today. In this webinar, we're going to be talking about three things. One, we're going to look at how do you build that personalized study plan to get to that score of 760. The second thing that we'll talk about is how do you execute that study plan such that, as you put in more effort, you actually indeed move closer to that score. And the third thing we'll look at is certain pitfalls that people fall into or certain traps that people get into when they're studying and how to avoid those traps. So overall, it's a fairly strategy-oriented session. We will do we'll solve a couple of questions in this session, but primarily we'll talk about strategies in this particular webinar. Now, for those of you who've just registered on our platform, I just want to inform you that we have a very comprehensive free trial. You can learn pretty much concepts in every subsection. You can learn SC, CR, number properties, algebra. You can take mocks. You can actually practice questions. So we give about 3 to 4% of all the content that we offer free of charge. On the left-hand side over here, that's just a few of the concepts that we offer in the free trial over here. So definitely check it out over there. And if you need any specific help, we do have strategy experts who can help you with that as well. Also, we have some upcoming webinars. We have a free Quant workshop, which is tomorrow. So that's think of this workshop as a proctored mock test, where in which we not only tell you what is your current GMAT score or current Quant score, but we also tell you which subsections you need most help in. So do you need to do better in number properties, or word problems, or PNC probability, and so on and so forth. But in addition to that, we also tell you what kind of habits might be might be preventing you from getting to your target GMAT score. So we also discuss those things over here. So you can click on this register now button to register for the same. And then next Sunday, we have a free webinar on the meaning-based approach in GMAT's intense correction. It's again at 7 a.m. Pacific time over here. In this, we talk about the famous meaning-based approach that we pioneered about 10 years back and now is a standard in the industry. We discuss the third generation of that meaning-based approach. All right, with that, I have quite a few students here in the webinar. Let's kind of get to know you guys a bit better. Let's figure out when do you plan to take the GMAT. Let's figure out what is your target GMAT score over here. And also, what is it that you're currently scoring? Okay, let's get this data over here. What's your current GMAT score? And move this up a bit. So this gives us a fairly good idea of the makeup of this group as a whole, and just give me 1 second. All right. So with regards to when do people plan to take the GMAT, you can really see about 34% of you plan to take the GMAT. I have not taken a date as of yet. But another 21% are in that 46 to 75 days over here. And then we have about 45% of you who have the GMAT in the next 45 days, and you can really see them segmented by various groups. With regards to the target GMAT score, you can see an overwhelming number. I wouldn't say majority, is still about 41%, and that 730 to 750 bracket. We also have a significant number of you who are in that 760 or higher bracket, and a slightly lower number in that 710, 720 bracket overall. But 10% of you are in that 600 to 700 bracket, 90% of you are a 710 or higher. And with regards to the current GMAT score, you can really see where people are, and it's very interesting where you can see it's a very even spread of folks. There's no one group that's more than 20%, barring that those who don't know their score as of yet. But we have a few people in every group, including a few folks who are scoring in that 710, 720 range. For those of you who don't know their score, you guys can take one of our mock tests to figure out your score. Here's a link to a Sigma X mock test. I'm going to briefly share this. I'm also going to share this later on during the session. With that, let's go right into the webinar pane. You should be seeing a presentation which says how do you get to 760 on the GMAT, and let me just clear all prior questions, and I'm going to put in a Q&A pod. Or how do you score 95th percentile or better on the GMAT? My apologies. And I'm going to put in a Q&A pod below this as well. So you guys can ask those questions during the session. So a lot of you are aiming for that score of 730 or higher. In fact, about more than 55% of you are aiming for that score. And I just want to kind of briefly tell you why should you aim for that score of 730 or higher. I think there are three reasons why you should do that. One is that top schools now require that score of 730 or higher, which means that, hey, if you're aiming for a top school, you kind of need that score over here. The second thing is, if you're looking for scholarships, a good chunk of that scholarship money. In the US alone, we give out about $350 million worth of scholarships. A good chunk of that money goes to people who get to score that score of 730 or higher. And then the delta in total earnings over a 10-year period, when you look at those who graduate from a top school versus those who don't graduate from a top school, that's about $500,000. And this number, $500,000, is the highest that it has ever been overall. Here is some data which kind of shows where GMAT scores are trending, and what you really see is that for most top schools, they're trending towards that 730 mark over here. What you don't see is there's no Harvard, there's no Stanford here. Why? Because even in this year 2014, they were already around that 730 mark or so. Statistically, during this time, and this trend has continued, for 23 out of top 25 schools, their GMAT scores went up. When you look at schools such as Sloan and Columbia, about 80% of their admitted class has a score of 700 or higher. Essentially, what these schools are telling you is that if you don't have a score of 700, don't even bother applying. And this is despite the fact that we have had a 15% decline in population as between 2014 and 2018. In fact, this year, the year 2020, or this fall of 2020 application cycle, is probably one of the first cycles when you'd see applications at B schools go up. So yeah. So that's something which we expect this trend to continue to go up or at least hold over here. And this trend is not just limited to the top 25. Whatever top 25 do, the other schools follow that, and you can really see the biggest score increases over this 5-year period have been at a bunch of schools, and 3 of those, or 4 of these schools are not amongst the top 20 or 25. So Jones, Marshall, WP Carey, which is ASU, and Georgia, they experience very significant score increases, and they are not among those top 25 schools. So this was some statistical data. Here is some anecdotal data that talks about the importance of your GMAT score. There's Nishant, who scored a 690 and he was rejected by a bunch of these schools, including Tuck, Penn, and Rotman. Stuck and Smeal told him, they said, we like your candidacy, we want to reject you, or we're rejecting you because your GMAT score is not high enough. So he scored a 740. applied to a bunch of schools. He got a full scholarship from Ohio Fisher as well as an admit from Columbia. Pravi similarly, 680, applied to a bunch of schools with 680, didn't get any interview calls, updated that score to 740, received 5 interview calls within hours of updating that score. And again, she got a bunch of admissions as well as a total of about $180,000 worth of scholarships. KK, or Krishnakant as we call him, scored 680, was rejected by every school, and this was done in round 2. Over here, scored 720, applied in round 3, got full fellowships from pretty much every school that he applied to over here. So again, essentially, a GMAT score today is way more important than it was probably 6-7 years back when GMAT was a smaller component of your overall application. The second reason, when you look at scholarship money, there's a lot of scholarship money that these schools give out. So $350 million in the US, but $50 million in Europe or so. And based on our estimates, more than half of that scholarship money goes to students who get to that score of 730 or higher. So if you look at some of the math, this is what USB schools give out as merit-based scholarship. And e-GMAT has got about $40 million worth of scholarship money every year. And based on our estimates, about 55% of this money goes to people who get to that score of 740 or higher. But pretty much all of that money goes to people who get to that score of 710 or higher. Which means if you get to that score of 740 or higher, that's kind of an average scholarship amount that you'd get overall. You could get way higher than that if you apply properly and if you have a good profile to back it up. Here are some more data points. You have Mansi, who scored a 770, and she was able to get admissions from a bunch of schools, full scholarships from a bunch of schools. She chose to go to Harvard with a $90,000 scholarship. Victor Makula got a full ride from Ross and Keenan Flagler with a score of 770. Kong Bui scored a 760, was able to get 4 full rides. He actually got a full ride from Ohio Fisher as well as a $1,700 per month stipend to study at Ohio Fisher. So this is not just a full ride, but also money in his pocket to do that. We talked about Nishant. You can see how much was the scholarship amount that he got from Ohio Fisher. Talked about Pravi, and we also talked about KK overall. Okay, and this is another interesting story of a student who scored 710, applied to a bunch of schools. So he was interviewed by Michigan and Columbia, so Ross and Columbia, and he thought the interview went really well, but both these schools waitlisted him. So he reached out to these schools and said, hey, I thought the interview went really well. I thought we really connected. I thought there was a fit. What happened? The school said, hey, we like your candidacy, but your GMAT score is not high enough. So he took the GMAT again, improved to 750, and just updated his GMAT score. Didn't even apply again. So that wait list actually turned into an admit with scholarship. So he was able to get to about $90,000 worth of total scholarship money from Columbia, and which is where he's studying right now. And again, these are not just isolated instances. These are cumulative instances where you see many such instances on our YouTube channel. If you kind of look at these 2 playlists over here. Okay, and here's here's a quote by John Fuller, who's a former admissions director at Stroud. He says, someone with a 770 is much more likely to get a financial award than someone with a 670. Why? Because the school wants to buy that high GMAT score. The third reason, probably the most important reason, is that the delta in total earnings. And this is probably the most ignored reason that's there. And to demonstrate that, what I'm going to show is data from 2 schools. One is Babson, and the other is MIT Sloan. And these schools, both of them are based in Boston. They're about 20 miles apart, and about 60% of the class, actually, let's remove this annotation over here. But 60% of the class that graduates from these schools goes to these essentially gets a job in the New England area. So arguably, they have access to similar opportunities over here. When you look at the median starting salary from these schools, they differ by about $40,000. And you look at the average sign-on bonus, that differs by about 20 grand over here. Now, this is what it is today. About 15 years back, this delta overall was just 20K. So right now, the delta is about 60K. 10 years ago, that was 20K overall. So what has happened over these years is that companies have regard graduates from top B schools a lot more than they do graduate from lower tier schools. So if you compound this and say, okay, you're not going to get a bonus every year. So if I take that to be about 45,000 as a delta, multiplied by 10 years, you get close to $500,000 over here. Okay, so 3 reasons why you should aim for that score of 730 or higher. Okay. Now with that, hopefully that motivates you enough to get to that high GMAT score. Let's talk about how do you ace the GMAT. And if there's one thing that I want you to remember with regards to acing the GMAT, that's about acing the GMAT is about building ability over here. And to do that, I want to really talk about what does ability mean and versus what does accuracy mean. So when we take a quiz, when we take a mock test, when you think about accuracy, it's, you take a 10 question quiz, you get 8 out of 10 questions correctly. That's actually that percentage of questions that you answer correctly. It has no comparative status in it. It's just a pure number. And all you're really saying is, I had an opportunity to get 10 right, I got 8 right, so my accuracy is 80%. And ability is a very different metric. It is a comparative metric. It compares you from other test-taking population or from other people who tend to do the same activity. So if it's not test-taking, it's coding, it's ability in coding, it compares you to other coders who kind of writing the same kind of code. If you're designing a bridge, it will compare you with other civil engineers who are aiming to design that bridge and how efficiently or what's the efficiency status of that design that you have overall. On the GMAT, this is what matters. This actually is not as important. So you can have a quiz where you have an accuracy of 80%, your ability might be 50 percentile, or you can have a quiz where your accuracy is 80% and your ability might be 99th percentile. And so it's really important to kind of worry about this ability over here. And to demonstrate that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to really tell you about a GMAT how an adaptive test works. Now, the GMAT follows the same principle. The algorithm is slightly more sophisticated, but it follows the same principle. This is what we call as a simplified adaptive test algorithm. What you see on the x-axis over here are question numbers. So you're going from question number 1 to 6. What you see on the y-axis over here is the difficulty level of questions. So we're going to look at 2 students. We're going to call them case 1 and case 2. So student 1 or case 1 gets the first question. Gets the first question, which is of a medium difficulty level. He gets that right. Hence, gets the second question, which is of a higher difficulty level. You can really see we are going up on the y-axis as we move forward, which means the difficulty level is going up. He gets the third question, which is of an even higher difficulty level. He gets that wrong. Consequently, he gets the fourth question, which is of a slightly easier difficulty. So how do we get that? Yeah, if you draw horizontal lines from 2 and 3, you can see this fourth question is between questions 2 and question 3, the difficulty level of that. Right, let me just remove this annotation. And then gets the fifth question, which is of a, gets the fourth question right, of course, and gets the fifth question, which is of a slightly higher difficulty level, gets that wrong. Now, student 2 or case 2. So let's assume we're ending the test at question number 5. So let's now see how does case 2 do or student 2 do. Student 2 gets the first question, again, median difficulty level, gets that wrong. Consequently, gets the second question, which is easier, gets that right. Gets the third question, which is slightly more difficult, gets that wrong as well. Gets the fourth question, which is consequently easier, gets that right. Gets the fifth question right as well. So if I were to end the test at this point, then who do you think would be doing better? at this point? Would it be student 1 or student 2? Who would be doing better? Student 1 or student 2? All right, let's just do that. And then, but 87% of you. Let's get a few more answers over here. And then the second reason that I want you to talk about is, why do you think student 1 is doing better? So as an open-ended question, you can type your answers in. 87% of you say student 1, and that's correct. Why do you think student 1 is doing better? Okay, you can type in your answers, put those in over here. All right, let's look at this. He upped the ante, he tackled higher difficulty level questions. Someone says he started with the correct answer. He answered harder questions correctly. So you guys are really giving really good, very good answers. Student 2 has gotten more difficult questions correct. So that's why student 2 is doing better over here. Okay, thank you very much. Because GMAT tests the ability to answer difficult questions correctly. I really like that over here. So when you look at their accuracy, both of them have identical accuracy. Both of them got 3 out of 5 questions correct. Yet student 2 is doing better. Why? Because he got 5 questions. Each one of them was either at or above the average difficulty level. Only the first question for student 1, sorry, not student 2, student 1 is doing better because he got each of these questions at or above the above the average difficulty level. Student 2 only got the first question, which was at the average difficulty level overall. Okay. So when it comes to acing the GMAT, you have 2 challenges that you need to fulfill. Challenge 1 is to make sure that the test serves difficult questions to you. When you think about case 2 or student 2 over here, student 2 did not even get difficult questions served to him, right? Beyond the first question, did the test even serve difficult questions to him? Only the first one. The last one we are not considering. Remember, we are just closing the test over here. So let's not worry about that last question. But yes, question number 6 is what was above the average difficulty level. But barring that, he did not. Okay. Then student 2, case 2 is answer those questions correctly. That's something which is really important. So when it comes to this point over here, what's important is that your GMAT score today, or rather has always, is governed by the ability to answer difficult questions correctly. That's something which I want you to take away from this entire exercise, that your GMAT scores governed by your ability to answer these difficult questions correctly. And that's really important. Why? Because when we think about that GMAT score, and we really think about a bunch of these other things, such as timing, exam strategy, choosing which questions to attempt, stamina, and so on and so forth, those are important. But if I were to really draw that 80-20 rule, the 80 part over here would be that ability to answer difficult questions correctly, and the 20 part would be all of these things over here. The 80 part would be this part. And in my experience, and I've taught upwards of 50,000 students, it's this 80 part that pulls people down. It's not this for 9 out of 10 students. Only 1 out of 10 students is where this part starts to become important. Now, there's a question which says case 3. What if someone solves 3 questions correctly and then runs out of time? Who's better, case 2 or case 3? Let's just make sure who asked this question. and I would want that particular person to apply this principle and answer this question. Mr. P, that's what is the name of the person who asked this question, apply this principle, and how would you answer this question based on this principle? Let me just clear this and put that answer in. Well, the thing which is there, and I think let me just answer this, I think, and which is one of those other things which when you get into the realm of GMAT and MBA, you have to get more details. Usually you don't, there is no straight answer. The answer would depend on who's answered more difficult questions correctly, right? Here is the principle over here. If case 3 is answered in those 3 questions, more challenging questions correctly, then yes, case 3 would do better. If on the other hand, case 2 has answered more difficult questions correctly, then case 2 would be doing better. Bottom line, the thing that I want to make sure that you understand what this is, when I am giving you this principle, this is not to really say, how do you attempt the test? Remember this. A lot of people, and the person who asked this question is thinking about, hey, how can I use this principle to maximize how much I score on the test on that particular test day? Mr. P, is that what you were thinking, right? When you asked that question, that is exactly what you were thinking, right? And P is saying yes over here in the Q&A part. Thank you. This principle, the reason I'm talking about this principle is not for the test day, because on the test day, you have no basis to make that judgment whether a question served to you is easy, medium, or hard. The reason why I'm asking this principle is because when you are preparing, when you solve a few, you start with easy and medium questions. You always should, unless your ability level is already high enough. You should start with easy or medium questions and then move to hard. But when we're preparing, let's say you're preparing number properties and you've been studying number properties for about 4 days, and you really get to that 5th day when you're really solving those hard questions and you've already done well in easy and medium. Then we have that tendency to really say, okay, I just took a few quizzes, I got 8 out of 10 correct in each one of them. Maybe I'm good enough in number properties, so let me move over to algebra. Does that tendency happen? Do you feel that? Do you feel that? Right? This is for that point, which is to really tell you that, hey, if you're aiming for that 750 score, you've got to answer difficult questions correctly. Don't move over to algebra. Don't ignore those difficult questions and number properties which you've gotten to on that 5th day, because that's the most difficult piece for you. I mean, sustaining yourself, not answering those questions. It's sustaining yourself on that 5th day to continue to study number properties with that same vigor that you studied number properties with on day 1. And this is not just about number properties, it's about sentence correction, it's about critical reasoning, it's about reading comprehension. I mean, people get fed up with reading comprehension and they just move on. It's about habits. It's not about what you do on the test day. This is not a test taking strategy. This is a test preparation strategy. Is that clear, Mr. P? Or others also? Does that help? One of the other things, I saw a couple of questions that were related to profile. No one calls me sir, they call me Rajat. So I saw a couple of questions related to profiles, guys. I won't be able to do justice to those questions while we are doing this session. But in an hour and 40 minutes, we'll be done with this. You have a question then, I'd be able to do justice to those questions then. So forgive me, but again, if I start answering questions related to your profile, we won't get done with the session. Okay, GMAT's a test of your ability. So this was principles. Here is data, and what you see is the older GMAT prep attempts over here, which are on the verbal section. You see 41 questions. The beauty of the older GMAT was it was longer, but the GMAT prep test gave us way more insights. The official GMAC, they've not invested in their GMAT prep tests overall, which frankly sucks. And I've told them this thing on their face that it sucks. Why would you not do that? But the insights that they give us, they again further this claim over here that GMAT's a test of your ability. What you see over here are 2 students. When you look at their accuracy between question numbers 11 and 41 over here, you would find it's identical. Both of them have made 9 mistakes between question numbers 11 and 41. The only difference is that this guy has made 2 more mistakes over here, gotten 2 more questions wrong. You look at their actual verbal scores. This is the verbal subsection or verbal section. This guy has gotten a V43, which is the 97th percentile rank. So about 200,000 people take the GMAT every year, which means that you have a 97th percentile. You are among the top 6,000 students. This guy has a V32, which is 65th percentile rank, which means, again, out of the same 200K, you are among the top 70,000 students. Now, when you look at this over here, a lot of you, what's the feeling that you guys are getting? What is the feeling that you guys get? When you look at this data and say, okay, what inference do you draw? What and how do you feel? Let's get a few more responses before I broadcast the results. Okay. Here is where, now, I want to, so if you've put in your answers, I want you to look at this and read what others have written. Okay. And there are actually 3 kinds of responses here. The first kind is where people are afraid, they are angry, they are disgusted, and there are a bunch of you who are afraid, angry, and disgusted, and this is where you basically have this, and again, my drawing is not very good, but you have this angry face over here. I don't think the pen's working well enough. The second is people who basically are saying, okay, I've got to answer the first 10 questions correctly. So the second group of people over here really say, hey man, this is an opportunity. I get the first 10, I'm golden. And the third group of people actually understand this and say, they're saying that he probably would have answered, this guy over here, student 1, would have answered the difficult questions correctly. That's why he got a 97th percentile. If you are in that third group, I want you to pat yourself on the back. You guys actually got the right inference. When you think about this, right? 41 question section over here. This guy made 9 mistakes, yet was able to get into the top 3 percentile. People in group 1 and group 2, don't think about that. Don't think of that as an opportunity or really, wow, you can make a quarter, make so many mistakes, yet get to that high score, 97th percentile overall on the verbal section. Think about it. 9 mistakes out of 41, yet you can be among the top 3 percentile. I mean, which test offers you that opportunity? Which test does that? Do you guys want to do you know of a test another test that tells you, that allows you this luxury to make mistakes? No, there aren't that many tests. Okay. So again, as I said, accuracy is not as important on the GMAT. It's a test of your ability. So then how do we figure out ability from this chart? The answer is you cannot. There's a different ability metric. But what you can figure out from this is, as that group 3 said, student 1, first of all, received more difficult questions. The test did serve him more difficult questions, and he answered more of those difficult questions correctly than student 2. Remember, more is a comparative word. So we're comparing student 1 and student 2 over here. Okay. So if we can't figure it out from this matrix, then how can we figure it out? We have to look at what we call as the ability matrix over here. And this is your student 1, the guy who actually got a V43. That's his ability matrix. And you can really see he scored 95th percentile in SC, 95th percentile in CR, and 87th percentile in RC. And this is student 2 over here. He scored 81st percentile in SC, which was his best subsection, just 66th percentile in CR, and 59th percentile in RC. And so when I say that the GMAT's a test of your abilities, that ability part is not like a vague thing. It's actually a mathematical number that the GMAT computes internally. And then based on this, he basically received harder questions. Okay. So when you look at these two students through the lens of ability, does that make sense? And guys, that if you have a question, please put that in the Q&A pod, which is below the presentation, not in the right-hand pod over here. But when you look at these two students through this lens of ability, does that make sense? 95, 95, 87, does student 1 look very different from student 2? Right? It's way, way different. And behind that lens of ability, you can now see the difficulty level of questions that was served to the student. That's very different. Okay. So again, I want to say this again. Your GMAT score is governed by your ability to answer difficult questions correctly. So then, again, please put the question in the Q&A pod, and you, but over there. So what abilities does the GMAT measure? Here are the abilities that a GMAT measures. So everyone really looks at the score out of 800 and really says, okay, I want to get a 760, 740, 730, or so on and so forth. This score is composed of these two abilities. You have a quant ability and a verbal ability score over here, which both of them are out of 60, which also translates to a score out of 100. But then this verbal score is composed of 3 abilities, one each in SCCR and RC, and the quant score is composed of 2 different abilities, one each in arithmetic, and then the second is in algebra geometry. All of these 5 abilities, or each of these 5 abilities, is composed out of 100. Okay. Abhijit says, does it mean that answering the first few questions correctly will set your score bar high? It will, but it doesn't mean that if you make a mistake in the first 10 questions, you can't get back. Remember, it's an adaptive test. It allows you to make mistakes and it allows you to get back over there. The first 10 are important, but yes, they're not. It's not that you can't come back from it. But by the way, if you are a 90th percentile student, you're not going to make mistakes in a medium difficulty question. That's kind of the definition of being a 90th percentile student. Okay, so it's kind of really saying, hey, if you are someone who's or I mean, I'm taking an extreme example, not exactly applicable here, but just to really kind of put in an extreme parallel. If you are Mark Zuckerberg or Bill Gates, you're not going to make basic logical mistakes, no, on simple logic, no. Otherwise, you won't be Mark Zuckerberg. So if you're that 90th percentile student, you're not going to make mistakes in medium difficulty questions. Okay, just seeing the slide over here. Okay, hold on. Can you guys see the slide? Yes, no. Which it says, what abilities does the GMAT measure? All right. All right, let me just go to a certain slide. I just want to make sure. What about, let's just broadcast, I'm going to just clear all answers. What about this slide right now? You can see that now. So it probably was just that slide, and I don't know why that was the case. I'm going to figure that out. Acing the GMAT is equal to building ability. Yes. Perfect. Thank you. And does this apply to quant as well? Yes. Everything that we say, it's about the adaptive test algorithm. So a lot of you are really fixated on the first few questions. I think the thing which you have to ask yourself, which you should understand, is if the first few questions are uber difficult, which is a highly unlikely case, it does happen, but it happens in 1 out of the 10 cases, then making a mistake on them is not a problem. But if the first few questions are medium and you truly are that 90th percentile student, you're not going to make a mistake. That's kind of the very definition of that 90th percentile student. Or in other words, whether you're going to score high, that's going to be decided before the test. The test doesn't, the variability of your score is not going to be super high on the test. Within the e-GMAT platform, we track, and I'm going to discuss this later on in the session, we track about 200 metrics for each one of you. And if you do well on those metrics, there's a 95% chance that you're going to be within the 20-point score mark that we predict. If you don't do well on those metrics, there's going to be a 95% chance that you will actually fail on the test. Yes, and the crux, as someone said, is not to get the first 10 right. Crux is to build your ability such that you don't get easy and medium questions wrong. The crux is to build that ability such that. Okay, and if you build that ability, you will not get easy and medium questions wrong, or you will answer them correctly. Here's another example which kind of shows that you can make mistakes. There's an example of a guy who went from V17 to a V40. V40 is 91st percentile over here. You can really see that. You can see his ability scores. So these ability scores that I'm talking about, they are from your enhanced score report. You guys see that. You can watch a success story over here, or if you Google GMAT club plus a long journey 520 to 710, you'd get to that debrief. Now what you see is this is his attempt history, your ESR or your enhanced score report, which by the way you pay $30 to get, gives you this this report or this post-mortem of your attempt. What you see is that, hey, he got in the first two blocks of questions, each of these blocks is about 10 questions over here. So this is about 10 questions. This is about 10 questions as well. He got most of them right. In the first block, he got 88% right. In the second block, he got 71% right. Then he started making mistakes as the questions became harder. But yet, despite that, he was able to get to a 91st percentile. Okay, overall. Now, here is an example. Can you really see how, despite making mistakes, you can get to that high GMAT score? Now, many of you are saying, how long does it take to build that ability? How do I know that I'm going to build that ability overall? So let's talk about that. This is what we're going to do. Now, can you see the slide which says personalized study plan? Yes, no? Okay, many of you can see that. Pretty much everyone can see that. That's good. So let's talk about this. What should a study plan do? And this is a really important question because that's kind of your litmus test for whether you've made a proper study plan. What does a study plan do? What does a study plan do? Why don't you tell me? Okay, that's at a very high level helps you get to your target score. I understand that. But how does it do that? I mean, if I were to give you, or in other words, if I were to give you 5 different study plans, each one of them will take you from that score of 550 to 750. How would you figure out that which one's better? So that's kind of my question. If I gave you 5 study plans, each one of them will get you from A to B, 550 to 750, 600 to 700, whatever your starting and this thing is. How would you figure out which one's better? How would you choose one? I haven't seen a good response to my question. Let me just ask the question again. If I were to give you, let me clear your responses. If I were to give you 5 different study plans, each one of them helps you go from that 550 to 750, how would you figure out which ones to choose? Okay. Each one of them is created by experts. Good. Some of you are saying one that uses the shortest time. So now you're coming up with a metric to evaluate them. What else? Someone's saying the effectiveness and application of the plan. Okay. So those are 2 really great answers. So the way you choose a study plan is 2 things. One is One is to really say how efficiently does it get you there. And the second metric that you would really look at is what's the likelihood that the study plan helps you get there? I mean, how much feedback does each study plan provide, which tells you that whether you're getting there. So one is efficiency. The first metric is going to be efficiency, and I'm going to just write EFF. And the second metric over here is going to be probability or likelihood that you get to that score. Okay, that's what you would do. Okay, so that's exactly what you would do over there. All right, so with that, there are three questions that a study plan should answer. One is, how will I reach my target GMAT score? Okay. The second is, how much time do you need to get to that target GMAT score? And the third, which really is very important, is where am I putting this time? I mean, am I studying concepts? Am I studying? Am I doing application? Am I just practicing questions? Where do you put in this time? So and when you think about the GMAT, we talked about those 5 subsectional abilities. So your GMAT study plan actually is a different path for each of those subsections. In some subsections, you would be so good that you can get to that high GMAT score with just practicing. In other subsections, you may have to start from the very basics. And that's something that you need to understand about that study plan. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a case study over here. I'm going to really look at 2 students, Abby and Chase. Both of them want to go from that starting score of 600 to that score of 740. Okay. Now, Abby is someone who has a more balanced set of starting scores. She's at a Q42 and a V31. Chase is, really strong in quant, not so strong in verbal. He's at a Q49 and V23. Now, at a very high level, how many of you associate with Abby versus Chase? So who do you associate with more? Let me just clear all answers. I'm going to put in a poll question here. Who do you associate with more, Abby or Chase? So that way we get just the makeup of this class. You get the statistical numbers over here. And again, you might not exactly associate with either one, but if you're at a Q47, Q48, or a Q50, you're more in that Chase group over here. And some of you may not associate with either one. If you're at a score of 700, you might not associate with either one. That's okay. But again, can we get a few more responses, guys? But half of the class associates with Abby, the other half associates with Chase. That's good. Now, here is the question over here. Do you really think when you think about this, that they will actually use the same study plan to get to that score of 740? Do you think? No, they won't. Right? Do you think that they would study the same content? The answer is no. Right? They won't study the same content over here. Now, how many of you have gotten a study plan from, a book or your friend? How many of you over here have gotten a study plan from, let's say, you asked your friend and your friend said, this is a study plan that worked for me, and you really said, I think, let me just put in a yes/no poll question. Or you got a study plan from GMAT Club, or you got a study plan from another prep company, or you're following a 3-month or a 6-month standardized study plan. How many of you are over here are doing that? Just a study plan from a book or a generic. Let's kind of do that. If you don't have a study plan, then also put in that. Actually, I should have that question. Don't have a study plan piece as well. Okay, let's get a few more responses. The question is, how many of you are following a templatized 3-month study plan, a templatized 1-month study plan, or are following, just reading a book from beginning to end for pretty much everything, which by the way is a generic study plan, or are getting a study plan from be the GMAT or GMAT Club over here. So about 25% of you, 26% of you are doing that. The question that you have to ask when you get such a study plan is, who is it optimized for? Is it Abby or Chase? And to do that, to really say, which study plan is good for you, let's kind of look at this over here. And so we're going to focus on what how Abby's score is built up of. And to simplify things, and you may want to just write this down, just for this one thing, I want you to have something, a Word document or a pen and paper ready. For Abby, her quant and her arithmetic and algebra percentiles around that 42nd percentile. Okay. Again, remember, these are scores out of 100. This is not out of 60. This is a score out of 60. This is a score out of 60. But these numbers over here, all of these are scores out of 100. Now, it just happens to be that a Q42 score out of 60 is 42nd percentile, which usually is not the case. That matching doesn't happen usually. It's just a rare case. To simplify things, I've put her arithmetic and algebra percentiles to be around that 42nd percentile, and on verbal, I've put it at that 60th percentile. In reality, there are, about 20 combinations that could get you to that Q42, and another 30 odd combinations that would get you to a V31 over here. Okay. On the verbal side, Abby is around that 60th percentile overall. Chase, similarly, just for simplicity, is around that 72nd percentile when he's at a Q49, and around that 34th, 35th percentile, again, which means that about 65% of the test taking population is better than Chase in SC. 67% is better than Chase in CR, or 66% is better than Chase in SC, 67 is better than Chase in CR, and 65 is better than Chase in RC. That's a starting point over here. Okay. So, clearly, they would not go for the same quant and verbal scores to get to that score of 740. Their time required in quant and verbal is going to be different. They will actually, and the biggest difference which is there is they're not going to study the same content in either quant or verbal. Why? Because they're just very different individuals, even though both of them have a starting score of 600, have a target score of 740. So, how do they go about building that study plan? So for our students, we build this utility called Personalized Study Planner that allows each one of you to build your own personalized study plan. So let's see how this personalized study planner works. And what we're going to do is we're going to start this for Abby to begin with. So the first thing that the study planner does is it takes in your starting abilities. So you can see it takes in, the quant Q42, V31 over here. And then based on this, it tells you your target abilities that you should aim for. So these abilities, these scores, that Q48 and V42, which is what Abby should aim for, is personalized just for her. It looks at about 30 ways to get to that 740 score and says, okay, which way, which of the methods or which of the paths is Abby should Abby take so that the likelihood of success for her maximizes. And because Abby's strength is verbal, this is the path that it has recommended for Abby. It ensures that, hey, that she doesn't have to kill herself in quant, which is not her strength. It ensures that she leverages her strength in verbal over here. Does that make sense when you look at these things over here? Okay, yes. That is good. All right. Now, then it tells you where should Abby spend her time. So you can see her starting ability scores over here, and then her target ability scores over here. And then this one tells her how much time she needs. So Abby needs to spend a dedicated 2.1 weeks. And this amount of time is just calculated based on the amount of effort Abby says she's going to put in. And this is serious effort, dedicated effort, without you going to YouTube in between on SC on a weekday versus a weekend dedicated effort in CR over here on a weekday versus a weekend. It takes all of those into account and estimates that amount of time over here. And then similarly for Chase over here, this is the amount of effort. Now, one thing that I want you to notice is, for Abby in Quant, Abby is not looking to excel in arithmetic and algebra. She's not looking for that 90th percentile. And that's really important. Why? Because when you build a study plan, it's not important just to know what to do. It's also important to know what not to do. And this kind of defines what she's not going to do. And can someone infer what she's not going to do from this? Because she's aiming for that 65th percentile. While you put in your answers, I'm going to respond to Nikhil, who's our student. He says, I took a Sigma X mock. I plan to take another one tomorrow and have the main test in 15 days. Says, is this something which is tailored to me? Nikhil, this is not tailored to you. You should write to Ashutosh in our customer success team and make sure that he sends you the test readiness videos. So it's a set of about 5 videos. Write to Ashutosh at e-GMAT or support at e-GMAT over here. Okay, and you can really see over here that as some of you are saying that, hey, she will not answer a lot of difficult questions in arithmetic. She will not excel in the weakness. Well, I don't know what that is, but yes, for those of you who said not answer a lot of difficult questions in arithmetic, that is the correct thing. Okay. Chase, let's kind of now talk about Chase's plan over here. So Chase, again, remember, had a Q49, V23, and he had that 72nd percentile as a starting abilities over here and around the 35th percentile in each of SC, CR, and RC. And for Chase, you know, the tool leverages his strength in Quant and correspondingly really suggests, you know, a corresponding score on GMAT verbal. Okay. Then it calculates the amount of time this guy needs. And you can really see Chase doesn't need as long in Quant, but he needs a lot longer in SC, CR, and RC. Why? Because his starting scores or starting ability scores are a lot lower over here. So, let me just So let's kind of just compare Chase versus Abby. Both of them want to get to that same score. You can really see for Quant, Chase is using his strength to get there, and for Abby is using her strength in verbal to get there, and correspondingly, they're just filling the gaps with their weaker sections. For Abby, the weaker section is Quant. For Chase, the weaker section is verbal over here. Okay. With regards to the amount of time, but that's not the biggest difference. It's also, when you look at this, to say even though Chase is aiming for a lower verbal score than Abby is, he needs 50% more time to get there. Why? Because his starting score is less. Similarly, even though Abby is aiming for a Q48 versus a Q50, she needs twice as much time to get there over here. And this is kind of where the personalization of that study plan is really important. And when you do that personalization, it actually tells you how much time you need, and it increases that likelihood of you scoring higher on the GMAT. Now, Sean says, why is it much more difficult to get results above a 45 in verbal than Quant? Because a 45 in verbal is 99 percentile, which means, and that's kind of where the scoring scales differs a lot, which means that you need to be among the top 1 percentile of students. A 45 in Quant is essentially around that 50th percentile, which means, hey, there are so many students who are at that level. So the scoring scale on the GMATs, it's very different over there. All right. So again, their target scores are different. Their time spent on each of these subsections is different. But that's not the biggest difference over here. The biggest difference is where they actually spend this time overall. And to do that, let's kind of understand how do you get to that 90th percentile in any subsection. So this is SC, CR, RC, number properties, algebra, word problems, and so on and so forth. So when you learn concepts, and this is what we call as the various stages of learning, when you learn concepts, you get to that 25th percentile ability, which means in SC, if you learn what are verb ing modifiers, you get to that 25th percentile in SC. In CR, when you learn what is a strengthener, what's an assumption, what's a weakener, you get to that 25th percentile. Now, once you know those concepts and you learn how to apply them, which is while solving a question, you know what you need to do in step 1, what you need to do in step 2 and step 3, you get to that 50th percentile. When you master that application, which means when you're able to use that method on different kinds of questions, you get to that 70th percentile. And then when you get so well that you're able to do that across different scenarios. So for example, in critical reasoning, you're able to look at, a causal argument, a predictive argument. In sentence correction, you're able to cut across sentence structures. In that case, when you refine to perfection, you get to that 90th percentile. And then from there on, all you need to do is maintain performance. So for that, Rahul, who basically said, hey, I'm at that 730 score. What do I do in the next 2 weeks? I have that test. This is the stage that he is in. And so he has to do the maintain performance routine. Okay. Over here. So it's essentially, when you look at different stages of learning, you have different activities that you do at different stages. Okay. Now, let's kind of look at this over here. When you look at Abby, where do you think Abby will be spending her time? Can you put your answers in? In sentence correction, if I just look at sentence correction over here, where do you think Abby would be spending her time, given this model over here? Would she be spending her time in learn concepts and applications? Would she be spending her time in mastering application? Would she be spending her time in refine to perfection? Or would she be spending her time in maintaining? Let's get a few more responses before I broadcast the results. Let's get a few more responses. I have about 15 responses right now. Okay. So, as many of you have really said, she'd focus a good chunk of her time over here and over here in this case. She probably knows most of the concepts. Remember, she already is starting at 60th percentile. If she is Abby, if she were to buy an e-GMAT course tomorrow, I wouldn't ask her to go through the concept files. I would ask her to do a few application files, but primarily then I would ask her to go on this Scholaranium platform over there. Okay. So she knows applications, otherwise you won't be at that 60th percentile. Remember this chart over here. Once you learn application, you are at 50th percentile. She's in between points over here. She's at that 60th percentile. Okay. And so that's something which is there. What about on the quant side of things? What do you think Abby needs to do on the quant side of things, where she's at 42nd percentile? Where should she be spending time over here? Learn concepts and applications, right? So essentially, if you are Abby, the darker circles is where you're spending time. Over here, you're not spending a whole lot of time here. So this is not where you're spending a whole lot of time, but this is where you're spending a whole lot of time over here. Okay. But on quant side, she doesn't have to answer the most challenging questions correctly. So she's focusing her energy on these things. Does that make sense? Perfect. Now, for Chase, where do you think Chase would be spending his time? Where do you think Chase would be spending his time for verbal over here? Learn concepts and applications. Yes, he'll be spending his time over here. He'll be spending his time over here. He'll be spending his time over here. Remember, he has to get to almost 90th percentile. So for each of these, he'll be spending his time over here. He's at 33rd percentile. For quant, where would Chase be spending his time? Yes, this is where he'd be spending his time over here. Okay, but not here, but not here, not here, not here. Okay, so this is where he'd be spending his time. This is Chase's matrix. Does that seem logical? How many of you have done this for your own preparation overall? I mean, today, if you are studying, have you done this for your own preparation? Have you created a matrix like this? Let's kind of get a yes-no question over here. I'm going to put in a yes-no question. Let's just get in a poll in this. How many of you have done this for your preparation for each subsection? If you're an e-GMAT student, you probably have done this because you go through this process. But if you're not an e-GMAT student, you probably have not done this, especially to this level of refinement. Okay. Okay. How many of you know your starting abilities in each of these 5 subsections? How many of you know your starting ability in SC, CR, RC, arithmetic, algebra? Let's get a few more responses, guys. I have 150 students here. How many of you know your starting abilities? If you do not know your starting abilities, then one thing you need to do is to take a Sigma X mock test because it's the world's only mock test that will give you your starting abilities. It used to be that, again, GMAT prep mock test used to give you, but they've stopped doing that because the GMAC now makes money out of you taking the actual test and then ordering the ESR. But if the only way you can get this today is by taking a Sigma X mock test, so click on this and bookmark that link overall. The key thing that I want you to take away from this is that although both of them are aiming for that score of 740, their path to that score of 740, the time required on each subsection that they get to the score and what they study, that's very, very different. Okay, and that's something that I want you to emphasize then. And I want each one of you to make sure that you personalize this experience, because when you have this level of personalization, your likelihood of getting to that high GMAT score increases. If you're an e-GMAT student, you should already have your personalized study plan. You should have a good understanding of that personalized study plan. You should know those stages of learning, the map that I showed where you say learn concepts and methods, master, learn application, master application, and so on and so forth over there. You should know those things already. If you do not know those things, then there are a few things that I want to make sure that you do. Attend an onboarding session. We do it 2 times per week. Attend the test readiness session. We probably do this 1 time a week. And make sure that you work with a customer success team that tells you all of this. If you have any doubts with your preparation, with your study plan, write to Ashutosh, write to Nava, write to Deepak, Dhananjay, or Archit, and make sure that you understand these things for you. Okay, but again, give them some time because it's the weekend, and they only work part-time on the weekend, but they work full-time on weekdays. If you don't know this, again, you could write to support at e-GMAT. They all get copied on that. So if you are a free trial student, again, take a Sigma X mock. That's the first thing that you should do over there. Let me just bring in the web links over here. Take a sigma x mock and make sure that you get those starting abilities. You have a target score in mind, so you should know that target score, and do that. And then we have a few slots. I don't think we have very many that we have open, which you can book with a GMAT strategy expert to really devise your plan overall. So work with a GMAT strategy expert to devise your plan. I think there are about 15 odd slots that are open over here. Okay, so that's what you should do. Okay, so with that, let's talk about another question that many of you had, which is, how do you build ability? So what have we learned so far? Okay, what we've learned so far is a bunch of these things. You need that high GMAT score, GMAT test ability. There's these mathematical 5 ability numbers that build up your score. You need this personalized study plan. And then there are these 4 stages of learning and 1 stage of retention. And depending on what your starting scores are, you need to work on different things. If your starting ability is high, you start with mastering application and then move down over here. If your starting ability is low, you start with this over here, which Manoj has asked a question: can a student who started from basics, who haven't done math for a few years, can he take the e-GMAT course? Yes. Again, as I said, that's where the stages of learning come in. We actually have a foundation course over here in Quant. So Manoj, if you buy an e-GMAT course, write to us to say, I need that foundation course added to my portal, because we don't give it to everyone because not everyone needs that. But if you need that foundation, we'll give that to you over there. But the thing which is there is, depending on who you are, there are different activities at different stages overall. The other piece which is really important is this intensity level is also very different at different stages of learning. You get to master application, you get to learn application, and you get to master application, you're in a very connected intensity level. At this point, you shouldn't do anything else. If I were to really say where is maximum intensity and where 1 includes the high number, so this would be 1 over here and this would be 1. If I were to really say, this would be 2 over here, where learn concepts over here. Why? Because concepts are still isolated islands, but when you get to application, you're integrating stuff. Refined to perfection is still 2. Why? Because you've already mastered application over here. Again, remember, 1 is better, higher than 2. And maintaining performance for me is about closer to 3. And which is where we say, when you're studying SC, be super dedicated. Why? Because you need that intensity. When you're studying CR, when you're studying RC, when you are in that learning application and mastering application stage, be super dedicated. Don't do anything else. Okay. Just from a show of hands, how many of you over here are stuck at, or rather a yes/no poll, at that 60th percentile or lower level? How many of you have been preparing for some time and any subsection are stuck at that 60th percentile level? Okay, let's get a few more responses, guys. Let's get at least 60 responses. If you're not stuck at 60th percentile level in any subsection, then say no. Don't be afraid to be the only one. If you're stuck at it, don't be afraid to accept. Either way, I mean, no one's judging you over here. We are here to help you get to that high GMAT score. In fact, people who are attending are also here to help you get to that high GMAT score. A few more, guys. 140 students here. A few more responses. Okay. Now, why do people not improve beyond that 60th percentile? And I'm going to just take this piece SC over here, but you can do CR as well. So let's just to tell you, how many people are stuck at that 60th percentile? About that 80,000 folks are stuck at that 60th percentile. They spend about 40 hours learning sentence correction. This is just time spent on sentence correction. Most of them start with a 30th to 40th percentile ability over there. And their capability to get to that 90th percentile is, I mean, pretty much everyone can get to that 90th percentile. Everyone who's thinking about the GMAT. A 90th percentile student is also someone who's very similar. He also starts with that 30th percentile. He also spends 40 hours. and he gets to among those top 20,000 students, which is what the definition of that 90th percentile is. So what's the difference? The difference between a 90th and a 30th percentile student is their outlook. Why? Because 90th percentile is about achieving perfection, and which means that if you want to focus on achieving perfection, you need to have a corresponding outlook over here. So how does the 60th percentile student look at? He says, okay, GMAT SC is about learning these 8 major error types: subject, verb, verbs, pronouns, modifiers, parallelism, comparison, meaning, and idioms. Idioms is not mentioned here. And then the 60th percentile student actually uses splits as the primary technique. He looks at the original sentence, he looks at, okay, the answer choices, and really says, okay, what's the difference in those answer choices? And then if he can't find a whole lot of difference, then he kind of goes to the meaning overall. While studying, a 60th percentile student really, or while that's learning concepts and learning application stage, gets about 7 to 10 feedback points on his or her preparation. And with regards to learning versus practice, a 60th percentile student, out of those 40 hours that we talked about, spends about 30% of that time, so about 12 to 15 hours learning, and about 70% of his time or her time practicing. Is there anyone over here who associates with that 60th percentile student, has followed this path over here? Okay, you can see there are people. A 90th percentile student has a very different outlook. Okay, a 90th percentile student, okay, doesn't consider GMAT SC to be about these 8 concepts. A 90th percentile student considers GMAT SC to be about 200 constructs, or what we call as error types, which are within these error segments. So there are still those 8 ones over here, but it's about those 200 constructs that you're looking at. Okay. A 90th percentile student doesn't look at splits as a primary method. He looks at meaning as a primary method. For him, meaning is not an error type. It's a method to solve questions. While learning, that learn concepts and learn application, he gets about 100 feedback points. These are personalized to his personalized to point out gaps in his preparation. And he doesn't practice as many questions. He actually spends way more time learning. Why? Because based on these feedback points, he's doing course correction, which means he doesn't need that much practice. He doesn't need to solve that many questions to get to that 90th percentile. So piece over here. So overall, a 90th percentile, even though he's learning the same content, is preparing very differently. What is a feedback point? Okay. I'm going to demonstrate that, but at a very high level, you've learned verb ing as a concept. Now, if I give you a sentence in which a modifier is placed before, in between, or towards the end, are you able to apply verb ing correctly? If I give you the verb ing modifiers in which it's talking about the outcome, or versus it's modifying a singular noun, then can you really apply that differently? If I use a verb ing modifier in a nested list, then can you really use it differently with parallelism combined, and so on and so forth? So that feedback on that verb ing modifier in these application states is that personalized feedback. Okay, hopefully that helps answer your question, but let's just demonstrate that over here. The thing that you have to really say is, if you're talking about these 200 constructs, can you excel at them, achieve that 90th percentile with 7 to 10 feedback points? And just to really demonstrate that, let's try and solve one question over here. So here is a question that I want you to solve using the method that you typically use. Hold on. Here are the answer choices. Let me remove broadcast results. And I'm going to give you 3 minutes to answer this question. Try solving this question overall. Okay, I'm going to mute my Okay, guys, last 15 seconds. Get those answers in. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Let me end the poll and broadcast the results. So let's see how you guys did. Choice C was the most popular choice over here. About 34% of you chose choice C, 20% of you chose choice B, 22% of you chose choice D, and only about 20% of you chose choice E. Okay, and a few of you chose choice A. Which choice do you think is the correct answer? Again, now that you know how others have polled. Okay, D, C, C, okay. All right. Now, good. So a lot of people are saying C versus D. We're going to look at this. What kind of method did you use to solve this question? Was it the meaning-based approach or was it process of elimination? Can you really, so can you type in the method and the choice that you chose? Can you say elimination and C if you chose elimination and C, or meaning and C if you chose meaning and C? Can you write just that over here? So comma is fine, dash is fine, any delimiter will do. So which choice you chose, please put that as well, so I can really look at this over here. What about choice B? What about choice E? What about choice A? Why are those folks not confident about what they did? Why do I only see choices C and D over here? Meaning and then elimination choice. D, meaning, and okay. B with while. B comes with while, so there's nothing wrong with while. But again, E and meaning, okay, meaning and C. All right. So I want you to read what everyone did, but what you really see is a good sentence structure and meaning and C. Look, an overwhelming number of people over here have used meaning and have chosen choices C or D over there. And it's really important over here. Why? Because as we solve this question, you're talking about what's feedback. As I solve this question, we're going to talk about feedback and how you use this. And we call this a strategic review thing, which, by the way, if you're in that second stage of learning or even doing application files beyond modifiers, make sure you should be getting the strategic review files from the system automatically. So when you think about this, there are no splits that exist in this question. You might really say, okay, you have the church coined over here, while with an ulterior motive over here, while a few experts. You have but in 4 of these 5 choices over here, which is a contrast word. But other than that, there aren't that many splits over here. So you can't really use the splits method even if you wanted to. By the way, this is how you guys are doing. I'm sorry about that. So essentially, you can't use the splits method even if you wanted to over here, which, by the way, even if you use the splits method, you wouldn't have been able to get this right over here. So let's kind of use the meaning-based approach. And in our SC webinar on next Sunday, we teach that approach. So in this session, I'm going to just summarize that approach and apply that approach over here. So what we're going to do is we're going to strategically pause on this sentence and really just to make sure that we understand the meaning of various aspects of this. So the church coined the date February 14th as Valentine's Day. Okay, so the church did something. It coined as Valentine's Day. Why did it coin it? How did it coin it? It coined it with an ulterior motive to do something. To means with an outcome. To is an outcome word over here, to Christianize the pagan celebration of Lupercalia. So the church coined something. So the church coined something with an ulterior motive to achieve something. That part is claimed by a few experts. Okay, but it is celebrated on this date. So there's a contrast word over here, to honor the anniversary of Valentine's death or burial, and that part is the most prevalent belief. Okay, so when you think about this, what the author wants to communicate from a meaning standpoint, the author talks, there are 2 claims about a celebration of February 14 as Valentine's Day. There are 2 claims. Claim 1 is for church, and it says, hey, it's celebrated as Valentine's Day because the church designated it with a specific motive. What is that motive? That motive is to Christianize that pagan celebration of Lupercalia. Claim 2 is by a few experts, and that is to honor the anniversary of Valentine's death or burial. Claim 1 is done by a few experts. Claim 2 is the more prevalent belief. Is this clear? When you look at the aspects of meaning, are these clear? One of the things when you notice over here is that none of these claims in aspect 3 are by the author. So there are none of these are by author over here. The author is merely a communicator. He's merely listing this thing out over here. Right? Claim 1 is by a few experts. Claim 2 is is the more prevalent belief, but it's not, neither one of these claims is by the author. Is that part clear? Look at the sentence once again before I go forward. Look at it again. The author, I know you guys are tired, but stay with me. All right. Now, I want you to tell me, when you were solving these questions, which of these aspects were you not able to extract? Which of these aspects, aspect 1, aspect 2, aspect 3, which of these aspects were you not able to extract? Well, 1 you were not unable to. So it says able over here. I'm just going to add unable over here. Well, you were solving this. 2, 3, and you have the numbers over here, 1, 2, and 3. 2. Let's get a few more responses, guys. Okay. 2, 3, 2, 3 over here. All right. If you were able to understand each of these 3 aspects, you know the meaning enough, you know the meaning-based approach. But if you weren't able to extract any one of these aspects, then, you don't have that skill set to extract meaning. Now remember this, there's a skill set to do this. There is no grammar here. There's a skill set, and you're going to really see that skill set over here. To achieve that 90th percentile ability, you have to have that clarity of meaning overall. So let's kind of continue the solution. Let's look at choice A. Choice A, the meaning part is clear, but there are a few subjects missing. Is claimed doesn't have a subject. The church coined is a subject verb pair. It is celebrated as a subject verb pair, but there is no subject for is claimed. There is no subject for this verb is over here. So there's clearly a subject verb error in choice A. So I'm going to reject choice A. Okay. Now let's get to and get your responses here. And this is how you guys polled in this over here. Actually, this is not how you guys polled. This is how some others polled early on. Let me just, I think I have another poll that where we have how you guys polled. Let's just me get that over here. This is how you guys polled over here. You guys should be able to see how you responded in this. Okay, so let's move forward. So we have the meaning, we understand the error. Let's look at choice C. Choice B over here. B, 20% of you chose choice B. While with an ulterior motive to Christianize the pagan celebration of Lupercalia, a few experts do claim. According to the intended meaning, who had an ulterior motive? The church or a few experts? This is your original sentence, by the way. According to the original meaning, who had that ulterior motive? Was it the church or was it the experts? It was the church. What does this choice say? Who has the ulterior motive in this choice? The experts. Can this choice be correct? Claim to specific motive, this is where this went wrong. It changes meaning. This is not what the author intended to communicate. So this choice is wrong. Why? Because it illogically suggests that a few experts present their claim behind the celebration and those experts had an ulterior motive. Okay. Which also means is it actually fails to capture the motive that the church had over here. Because of this choice is wrong. People who chose choice B, can you see that difference in meaning? In the original choice, The church had the ulterior motive. In this choice, the experts have the ulterior motive. That's what we call as, there's no grammar here. It's the sentence structure in the context that kills you. Let's look at choice C over here. While a few experts claim that the church coined Valentine's as an ulterior motive, their more prevalent belief, who has the second belief in choice C? Isn't it the same group of experts? The same group of experts, right? Is that what the author wanted to communicate? No. Is that changing the meaning? The author wanted to communicate the prevalent belief, in general, the common belief, or mass people, as someone said. It is changing the meaning, which is why choice C is wrong. Okay, there's no grammatical error over here. Independently as a sentence, this is perfectly fine. It just changes the meaning completely over here. Now, for those of you who chose choice C, can you see the meaning distortion? Can you see why extracting the meaning, why getting all of those aspects is really important over there? Let's look at choice D. The church coined the date February 14 with an ulterior motive to Christianize the pagan celebration of Lupercalia as claimed by a few experts. This is a really interesting nuance. Choice D is wrong as well, by the way. I'm going to tell you why. Let's kind of look at this. Apple is the market leader is claimed by Forbes magazine. In this case, are you communicating information? Are you communicating information? Yes, you are. Are you making the claim that Apple is the market leader? Are you making the claim? No, you're not making the claim. Okay? Which means, should you be blamed if it turns out that if Apple is not the market leader? No, you shouldn't be blamed over here. So you are communicating information, but you're not making the claim. Forbes is, and you shouldn't be blamed if Apple doesn't turn out to be the market leader, right? Remember this is claimed. Let's take another sentence. So this is what we did over here. This is a summary. Let's take another sentence. Apple is the market leader as claimed by Forbes magazine. Are you communicating information? Yes. Are you making the claim in this case? Yes, you are. Should you be blamed if it turns out that Apple is not the market leader? Yes, you will be. Because you're saying Apple is the market leader as claimed by Forbes magazine. What you're really saying is, Apple is the market leader according to me. And by the way, Forbes magazine also claims that. Because you're saying as claimed by Forbes. Let me just do another parallel sentence, which is here. Let me bring in a notes pane. As claimed by Wall Street Journal. When you say coronavirus is dangerous as claimed by Wall Street Journal, what you're really saying is, one, and two, you're saying both of those things. When you say X says A is B as claimed by this, you're doing both. You're saying coronavirus is dangerous. I agree with it. And Wall Street Journal also claims it. You see the difference? Coronavirus is, on the other hand, if you say coronavirus is dangerous, is claimed by Wall Street Journal, you're not putting yourself behind it. You're just saying Wall Street Journal is claiming. Okay, and that's a big difference between you getting fired and you retaining your job, by the way, if you do it in the real world. Okay, so first one, you're merely communicating information. You can't be blamed if Apple doesn't turn out to be the market leader. In the second one, both you and Forbes will be blamed if Apple doesn't turn out to be the market leader. So let's look at the original sentence. In the original sentence, is the author making any claim over here? No. The author is not making any claim here. In choice D, the author is making both the claims. Claim 1 in choice D is made by the author. He's backing that claim. Claim 2 in choice D is also made by the author. The church coined February 14 as Valentine's Day, blah, 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 as claimed by a few experts. But its celebration on this day is, I'm making claim 1 as an author, and I'm backing claim 2 as well as an author. Huge meaning difference. It's subtle, but it makes a big difference in the end. Imagine you're communicating something to your boss, and you use is versus as, or as versus is. Your boss will believe you are backing what someone is telling you. And if the boss believes you're backing it and the boss trusts you, he's going to make a decision based on that. And if that decision doesn't pan out, who's going to get fired? You're going to get fired. Okay? If you are a CEO of a company and you write this sentence and the entire company follows you because you say, hey, we should invest in artificial intelligence as noted by Frost and Sullivan. What the company is really saying is, what the company would believe you is, okay, the CEO is saying that and Frost and Sullivan are also saying that. Versus the CEO is saying, we should invest in we should invest in artificial intelligence is what Frost and Intelligence is saying. Then you don't know whether the CEO is recommending. What you see is the CEO probably talked to someone at Frost and Sullivan and they are recommending that this particular company should. Choice E, which is the correct answer, and there's an excellent question over here which I'm going to discuss. Jesse's question, I'm going to discuss that after I discuss choice E. So that the church coined February 14 as Valentine's Day with an ulterior motive to Christianize blah 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 is claimed by a few experts. The author is not really taking responsibility. The author is saying that is claimed by the few experts, but the more prevalent belief is, again, the author is not taking responsibility. It is celebrated on this day to honor the anniversary of Valentine's death or burial. Claim 1 is correct. Claim 2 is correct. Claim 3 is correct. This is my correct answer choice over here. Okay. Why do people reject choice C? Because meaning-wise, it's perfect. They don't like the sentence starting with that, and they have this misconception that a sentence starting with that is wrong. They have this misconception. It's claimed as passive. Passive is wrong, so I'm going to reject choice C. You don't need that. You don't need that connector, if that's what you're really saying. Missing linker over there, you don't need that. No. And if you want to know why you don't need that and which instances you need, if you write to Shraddha or Stacy, they'll tell you, Imran. So yeah, the correct answer is choice C. Yeah, so Imran, you don't need that. And again, you don't want to go to the grammar nuance over there. But write to Shraddha and Stacy, reference the sentence and they'll tell you. And maybe they'll record a video for you. So coming back to the original question, which I think Jesse had that question to say, does the original choice always present a logical meaning, and is that meaning always correct? Yes. The answer to that is the meaning presented by original choice needs to be preserved. And if you, when you join our SC session, and by the way, which is next Sunday, I'm going to demonstrate that over here. And let me actually share the upcoming free sessions. Now, there will be a few questions, and those will be uber difficult, where the meaning of the original sentence may not be obvious. In this case, the intended meaning was obvious, but there are a few instances where the intended meaning is not obvious, and in those instances, you may actually have to infer that intended meaning. Okay, so but if you register for the free webinar, which is by, if you click on this register now button over here, we are going to show those examples in that SC webinar. Okay, so and I'll be happy to share that link once again towards the end. But you can really see what the meaning-based approach is. Sandeep, can you get the link to Kim in the Q&A pod? And thank you, Kim, for posting the question in the Q&A pod. It allows us to give you those links. So, and Sandeep, make sure you send the link to everyone so that everyone gets that link. But if you look at why you made a mistake, there are, first of all, can you see the different sentence structures over here? It's the same errors, but the sentence structures in each of these answer choices, that sentence structure is super different over here. Can you see that? One thing that I need a few more yeses, guys. Why just one yes over here? Okay, now use this method, spend the time to extract the meaning and try solving difficult official questions. You're going to be amazed how easy they become. Okay, over here. We've talked about the difference. The thing which is there is, if you want to get to that 90th percentile, you need to be able to do that. You need to be able to essentially extract all the meaning aspects out. And for those of your e-GMAT students, we offer you, free live sessions, which are paid live sessions in sentence correction, a total of 10, which includes, in addition to that course, that's something that we offer as well. And again, the first two sessions in these two live sessions are dedicated just on how to extract the meaning. No errors, nothing, just on how to extract the meaning overall. With about 40 to 50 exercises that are dedicated to these sessions. So make sure internally you register for these sessions and you attend these sessions. Okay, so again, remember, depending on where you are, you need to do different activities at each and every stage of learning. But to get to that 90th percentile, you need to do a few things. To be able to go through these stages of learning, you need to have the right foundation. You need to follow the right method. We talked about the meaning-based approach. And SC, you can really see, many of you were saying we're following the meaning-based approach, not following it the right way. You weren't extracting all the aspects out. And then you need to do that refinement over here. And you need feedback at each of these stages. When you're building that foundation, you need 100+ points of feedback. When you learning the method, you need about 40 to 50 points of feedback to get to that 90th percentile. Remember, you want to be among the top 10 percentile of students. When you're doing that refinement, about 30 to 35 points. Now, if you don't build the right foundation, the number of points of feedback over here, that just multiplies to 10x. But if you're doing the right kind of foundation, this stage is going to be the shortest stage for you. Why? Because you will already have most of the stuff that you need to get to that 90th percentile over there. But essentially, 90th percentile is about perfection in all areas. When you achieve that, that's when you get to that 90th percentile. How many feedback points do we provide? When you're learning concepts, the e-GMAT platform provides you with 75 personalized feedback points. When you're learning application, 23 personalized feedback points. When you're mastering that application and refining to perfection, we provide about 30 to 50 feedback points. And then to maintain performance, we have Sigma X mocks, we have our custom quiz engine. With that, that's where we actually give you about 5 to 10 personalized feedback points over there. Okay. Here are two case studies of people who've done this. Okay, there's a guy called Jim Yu who went from 700 to 770. Is Kim Wei, who went from 610 to 760 over here. Okay, so here's Jim. And what you can see over here is Jim in his first attempt got a V34. And as you look at this, what you're going to really notice is he needed improvement in CR and RC. Here are his ability scores. He needed that improvement. We gave him that personalized study plan. And within 20 days, he was able to go from that V34 to V42 over here. And you can see the ability improvement from 39th percentile over here to 94th percentile over here. And sentence correction again from 63rd percentile to 94th percentile over here. He wrote his debrief on GMAT Club. That's his debrief. You can download both these ESRs. I took actually the screenshots from this ESR as well. And he really says this. He says, and this guy is a native speaker. Is born in Canada overall. He says solving lots of practice questions is not the best way to prepare for the GMAT. Achieving V40 plus is not just about memorization and repetition. And he says, without the meaning, you can get to that easy to medium questions, but grammar plus meaning will carry you all the way up to a V40 plus score. And for CR, he says, answer CR as if they are no answer choices. Pre-think on everything overall. Okay. You can also watch his interview on our YouTube channel over here. I can actually share a bunch of these interviews, which you can bookmark over here. So you can watch these interviews. Each one of them is on our YouTube channel. So he's actually gotten into Colombia. He's waiting for booth. Kim over here. Again, very similar story. V37, you can see 82nd percentile. Again, you can see one specific weakness in RC. Again, within 20 odd days, she was able to go from a V37 to a V44, 98th percentile on verbal. You can see that improvement in RC for her over here. Also that improvement in SC from 87th to 99th percentile in SC overall. So these are ways in which you can really do this. So a few of you have been asking about this feedback. How do we give this feedback? And I'm going to really give you a very small subsection of our paid version of the course. This is a subject verb module. What you see over here is, how you go through each of these files. And this is a video file, which is where you see the video icon over here. Now, in each of these video files, we actually automatically captured about 50 data points per video file. We evaluate you on this, you get a score, and you can see this in your dashboard. We also capture your time that you spent over here. Now, what you see in this case is this guy did not do well on the application file, but you can also see he spent a ton of time revising his mistakes, which is why right after this, in the next evaluation in the ESV practice quiz, he was able to get to 100%. Okay. Now, this is the verbs module. Again, very, very similar architecture. What you see over here is, again, he did not do well in this file over here, but he did well. Actually, you can't see this part over here, but he scored 100% in the following file. And we can see why he did that, because he bookmarked all the questions. So this is within the interface of that practice quiz. He bookmarked all these questions and he revised them again and before he attempted the next quiz. So because of that feedback mechanism, you're doing that course correction right then and there, and you're able to do that. Okay. So for him, he really says, hey, the biggest thing in SC was the application of concepts. His concepts were fine, but he didn't know how to apply them. And that's kind of where, when he says application, it is the meaning-based approach overall. So once again, I want to thank you guys for being with me today. I want to end this with this. If you're an e-GMAT student, make sure that you have your personalized study plan. Make sure you understand it. Just having it is not enough. And you understand those stages of learning and you attend those onboarding sessions next week. If you're not an e-GMAT student, if you don't know your starting scores, take a Sigma X mock, and I'm going to give you the web link for a Sigma X mock over here. And then I also want you, if you've not scheduled a time and if you still have slots available, I also want you to really get that plan for you. Okay. And here's a summary. Again, make sure you understand these stages of learning. Make sure that you get the right feedback and you act upon it. Really important. If you don't act upon it, you're not going to see that improvement. Okay, with that, let me hide this. Let's just look at a few questions. I know many of you staying back just because of this. Let me see if I can get you the session PDF. I'm going to just upload the session PDF, and if you have any questions that have not been answered, I'd be happy to address those right now. And while I do that, let me get you the session PDF. Just give me 1 second. Just give me 1 second, guys, while I do that. I put it in the wrong folder. Sorry about that, guys. Here's a session PDF. What are the chances of getting into, so Neeraj says, what are the chances of getting into a good B school in Europe or US or Canada if you're 35 years and you have 10 years of experience? Because most people get to that age, get to be top B schools at 26, 27. Neeraj, it's a great question. So I'll tell you what B schools look for, and yes, you're right. First of all, the chances are lower. Having said that, I'm going to first give you a few examples of students who have done this. Okay. And you can also connect with these students and see how they've done it. Here's a guy who's 34 years old who's gotten into a top B school. Let me see if I can share this with you. Yes, I can actually share it with everyone. And if you look at e-GMAT MBA after 30, you'd actually, if you Google e-GMAT plus MBA after 30, you're going to get a few more case studies over here. But in general, when you're looking at when B schools get an application from an older candidate, there are a few things that they look at. One is, will they be able to provide a return on investment? I mean, you're going to be investing about 200 to 220 grand on an MBA if you look at lost wages, if you look at the fees and other things. So is there an ROI, number one? Number two, does an MBA at this stage make sense? And why does a full-time MBA make sense versus a part-time or an executive MBA? And because typically, you do a full-time MBA primarily for a change in your career. So that's a career in the 34, 35 makes sense. And then the other piece is the student likely to find a job? So I was talking to a couple of students. In fact, if you go to our success story section, that success story would be uploaded probably tomorrow or day after, where we had this guy who's an entrepreneur. He has his family business and he's been doing that for 10 years. And he wants that family business to get to the next stage. For him, that 10 years worth of experience is not going to be a problem at all because he addresses all the concerns over there. Similarly, I've visited many B schools and, for example, UCLA Anderson, I visited that school in 2018. The oldest student in their full-time MBA class was 47 years old. He had a good reason to do an MBA and they admitted it. When I did my MBA, the oldest student was 42 years old and he had a good reason to do an MBA. So yes, it's difficult, but if you address those concerns, you will be able to get in there. Okay. B schools for strategy consulting. I can actually send you a list again. We have a very solid knowledge base, guys. If you Google e-GMAT plus something, you'd be able to get really good links. Let me just Google e-GMAT plus strategy consulting. Bing doesn't do the great job. But I mean, essentially, whenever you talk about strategy consulting, the first school that comes to me is stuck. But again, any top B school, will help you get to a top consulting firm. I mean, that's something which is there. But if you want a more specific answer, then here is a more specific answer that you can get. Okay. All right. Okay. So is the personalized study plan for free? Yes, we do. But that's something that you can talk to a mentor. If the e-GMAT course doesn't make sense for you, if you're not looking to get that feedback, then yes. Kane says, and I want to make sure Carolina, I'm pronouncing your name. It's Carolina, but Kanne. Is there a theory that you have to master prior to the test, such as the field of algebra or geometry? No, you don't. I mean, we start from the very foundation, so you don't have to. Just if you feel you're weak in quant, let us know and say, hey, I need that foundation course, and we'll give that to you over there. Jeet says, I'm an e-GMAT student. I'd scheduled an online test 2 weeks earlier, but I was cancelled due to a technical issue. I want to restart my preparation. I want to make sure that you have a personalized study plan. So Jeet, again, if you have a recent PSP, then if you recent Sigma X mark, I'm sorry, then definitely put that data into the PSP tool. You have unlimited access to PSP tool. So since you are a paid student, so you get to use it as many times to replan your preparation as many times. So use that over there. Take the output of that tool and then write to Ashutosh or the customer success team. I'm sure you've written to them to really say, does this plan make sense? And this is what I'm planning to do. And they can confirm that. So that's what I would do if I were you. So if you have a recent Sigma X mock, use that. If you have good estimates of what your ability scores are, use that in the PSP tool and go from there. Okay. You've taken the test 3 weeks earlier. Should you take one more? No, Jeet, if you're taking the test 3 weeks earlier and have been preparing for 3 weeks, I would add about 4 to 5 percentile points in the subsections which you've been preparing. That's kind of the worst case. I'm just doing the worst case part over there. If you've not been studying, I'd probably take 5 percentile points off from the subsections. That's kind of what I would do. But yes, you have a decent baseline if you took the test 3 weeks ago. Okay. All right, hopefully that helps, Cheat. All right. All right, so Chris says, how many hours per week is it recommended to study to see and score improvement? So Chris, we recommend that you put in at a bare minimum, if you're studying for this GMAT, 15 hours per week. The ideal number that we recommend is between 18 and 24 if you're a working professional, because beyond 24, it just becomes very difficult to study. And so I think that's kind of, for me, bare minimum 12. If you have a very heavy work week, I would still recommend you put in 12 hours. And this includes the work on the weekend, but otherwise 18 to 24 is an ideal time, especially these days. It's, if you're working from home, it should be. Neeraj says, is it advisable, and says it may be a common question, is it advisable to quit your job and study for the GMAT if you're not getting even 3 hours a day to study. Yes, 3 hours a day on a weekday is a lot. First of all, let me just say we budget 2 hours per day on a weekday and about 4 to 5 hours per day on a weekend, which is how we get to that 18 to 24 hours. So 3 hours a day is a lot. That's one piece that I would say. The other thing, and I'm going to actually share an article, which actually I think it's something that we need to refresh this. Let me just get that. Here's an article which I wrote, Working Professionals Study Plan, over here. So do we recommend that you quit your job? I don't. I'll be very frank. We don't. What you need to do is you need to find pockets of study, and that's kind of where the beauty of the concept and application files is. Lunchtime, please, and make that little sacrifice and really just spend about 30-35 minutes doing a concept file or an application file. Wake up early in the morning, make those study routines where you say, I'm going to wake up at 5 in the morning every day, study for those 2 hours. That way I don't have to worry about it. Give up on watching TV. Study during commute, take an Uber. I mean, you make those little adjustments to get, that 2 hours of intensive study time. And then while you get 15-20 minutes here or there, just revise what you've done. Don't do new things when you have 15-20 minutes, but get a consolidated block of an hour to do new things. And if you can get 2 hours in the morning, then that's something which is there. If you can get 2 hours in the evening, do that. But you will have to make changes to your lifestyle, but we do not recommend that you quit your job for two reasons. One, you still need that letter of recommendation. GMAT's is a step towards a goal. It's not the goal by itself. Although, to many of you, it might seem like the goal. We get a great GMAT score, don't get into your B school of your choice. Yes, we get our money, but, we don't get your gratitude. And that's not what we want. We want your gratitude to help you get to that target dream B school. So don't quit your job and make changes to your daily life. Worst case, to start your preparation, take about 3 days off and intensely start that preparation. Sometimes we need that time off to get into a rhythm. But once you get into a rhythm, you can work full time. Okay, so hopefully that helps. Okay, perfect. Yeah, I mean, one thing that I would really say is that, don't expect that things would happen if you don't change anything. I mean, you were not studying for the GMAT. Now you're studying for the GMAT, so something's got to give. So, and whenever you're starting something, you give yourself the time of, the luxury of time. Okay. Shankar says, I'm getting 700 to 710 in official mocks, but 650 to 640, 640 to 615 in this thing. Is there, can I improve my verbal score within a week? Again, write to the support team. I can't really tell you what you can and what you cannot. I'll give you a case study, by the way. But first thing I'd say is, if you're getting that 700, 710 in official, and you're getting 615 hours, most likely you'll get 650 on the official test. I have seen this enough times to really say this, Official mocks, if you guys know a few questions, you end up getting that high score. e-GMAT mocks, you don't know that, but e-GMAT mocks are, 9 out of 10 times are better predictors than official mocks. So I would do that. Let me just give you this case study. And this case study shows how someone used data using from the Sigma X mock to go from 700 to 750. I mean, you can use the same principles to go from to improve in your end. Alston says, I work in hospitality, and thank you for that response. Alston Davis. So it says, I work in hospitality all my life. It's pertaining to that question. MBA at an age of 34, 35. He says, work in hospitality all my life. I've worked there in hospitality, and age is not a factor. You just need to state the reason why you need your MBA at this stage of your career. And if you have the right kind of GPA, you'd get in there. And he says, I need help with the GMAT score. So yeah, I mean, schedule a session. That way you can get help. But thank you for that input, Alston. That was really valuable. And again, if you're not working, we can put 8 hours, and your time to prepare would go down. I mean, there are enough. So for example, for you, if you go to Sharang, you can really see 690 to 740 in 2 weeks. So Sky was not working, was able to improve that. Jim was able to improve that in about 20 days. And there are many such stories over there. Again, if you're working, if you're studying full time, we can compress that prep. So Suvrat says, does a work gap in your work experience hamper admissions to B school? Depends on when it is. So for example, if you've been unemployed for the last 6 months and there's no good reason why you should be unemployed, it will. But if you were unemployed 4 years back for a year, and then you've been working really well, you're going to get a really good letter of recommendation, that's not a problem at all. Again, the key thing which is there is the reason why. So when you have a gap in your work experience, it reflects two things. One is either you're not serious professionally, or B, you're not employable. And if you can circumvent around that by saying, okay, I've been employed for the last 3 years, and I've been doing really great career-wise, which means I'm employable, not a problem. That you can have that gap for a year. That's not a problem at all. So Suvrat, hopefully that helps answer your question. Again, a good letter of recommendation would definitely help there. And Shankar, really glad to see that Nava was able to help you. That's really, really helpful. Does GMAT help for career transition? That's an interesting question. So I want to really just say maybe. I don't want to say yes. I don't want to say no. And I want to just say maybe because I've seen how GMAT helps, but it's not, I wouldn't say career transition, but it can help you be heard. And let me just explain this. So, and this has happened with me, and I've seen that happen with many of our students as well. So if you want to go into consulting, if you want to go into corporate strategy, then B schools or other, McKinsey, Bain, and all of these companies look for a high GMAT score. So that's one piece, and that's how you can say GMAT helps in career transition. That's kind of where I would say it helps. Now, if you are applying for a corporate strategy job, let's say tomorrow you do your MBA, you graduate, you get your first job, then either within the same company or you're applying for that second job, you have a GMAT score of 740, 750, you're applying for a consulting position, you're applying for a corporate strategy position, you're applying for a position where you are at one level below the director, which means the guy who's interviewing you is a director level or a vice president level. So most likely, I'd say 7 out of 10 times that guy would have an MBA, that guy would have a GMAT score. And if, on your resume, there's a GMAT score, which has at 740 or 730, 740, 760, even before you walk in, there will be that ounce of respect for you. So you will be heard. There'll also be that expectation that you will do better, but there'll be that ounce of respect. And I've seen that happen with me when I worked post my MBA, where I transitioned between jobs within the same company. As I interviewed in other departments, people asked me about my GMAT score, or rather they saw the GMAT score and they commented, and then I was allowed some leeway in interviews. So in that way, the GMAT score helps, and it doesn't just help you get into the top B school, but it's there for you throughout your life. All right, let's look at a few other questions. Paridhi says, I'm a 28-year-old chartered accountant with 5 years experience. I work as a tax consultant. I'm aiming for ISB. Would that be a good career choice? Paridhi, I don't know. I mean, I think, so good or bad is not for me to judge. I'll be very frank. In my opinion, you should do what you love to do. And if you if you do what you love to do, you're going to do a great job. You're going to have a really good life. You're going to make a ton of money, more money than you need. And so for me, that's kind of a paramount piece. Now, I understand that some people look at this and say, okay, I want to be in a profession where there's going to be a lot of demand. And yes, you can modulate your short-term goals that way. But in the long term, and what I've seen is that doesn't help. So if your passion is to let's say, be a VP, Pariti, then an MBA this is the right stepping stone for you, and an MBA would help you. But if your passion is to really run your own tax business and grow that tax business, then an MBA will help you. But if your passion is to become a senior tax consultant, then an MBA is probably not a great choice over there. So again, it depends on what your passion is. Why have I extended the session timing by an hour? Oh, that's a good question. We work on Pacific time and we have the daylight saving times. That's why we push the session by an hour, but I think we're going to adjust that. Actually, it's inconvenient for me too because sessions used to start for 7 a.m. Pacific and go till 9 a.m. 7 a.m. Phoenix time and would go till 9 a.m. Now they start at 8 a.m. and they go till right now it's about 10:15 a.m. my time. And I would rather they start at 7 in the morning, and so we might just do that for the next session, Neeraj. So we probably will ask you guys for your opinion for the free sessions. So if more people say, hey, 7 a.m. 7 a.m. Phoenix, which is 6 a.m. Pacific, 7:30 p.m. IST is much better, then that's something that we would do because I prefer that too. So. Does a company consider GMAT score alone for jobs such as how the GATE score works? Not really. I mean, remember, a GATE is actually a technical exam, and in India, which after your bachelor's degree you do that. It's kind of in the US is equivalent of the technical GRE, and a GATE score is an excellent way to evaluate someone. Why? Because if you have a really good GATE score, which means you know your engineering concepts well. I was actually one of the GATE toppers. I had 33rd rank in electronics and communication in GATE. That's where I did my master's degree, a technical master's degree before I did my MBA. So a GATE score serves a purpose, and it's something that it serves a good purpose in that regard. If you want to hire an engineer, the GATE score is a really good indication. It helps you compare an engineer against another engineer from a technical standpoint. Similarly, the GMAT score allows business schools and companies to compare one individual against the other from an analytical standpoint, from a communication standpoint, from the ability to absorb information standpoint. Not technical skills, but from a logical standpoint, which is what they look at. But if you have a high GMAT score, it doesn't tell you what skills you have. So that alone will not allow you to get a job. Now, your GMAT score might allow you to be evaluated more. And that's something that, as I said, it'll give you that leeway, but you still need to have the other skills what the job requires. Is work experience required for GMAT exam? No, it's not required. If you want to just take the test, you don't need it. But if want to get into a good business school, yes. I mean, we have lots and lots of students who take the GMAT in their third and final year, and because the score is valid for 5 years, they really say, I'm going to work for 2-3 years and then apply. And that's a good thing. Why? Because they have time in their final year and then they get done with the GMAT then. So the session tomorrow starts at 8 a.m. my time in Canada. Alston, the Quant workshop tomorrow will start at 8 a.m. Phoenix, 7 a.m. Pacific, 10 a.m. Eastern. So I mean, giving you all 3 time zones. I don't know which time zone in Canada are you in, because if you are near Newfoundland, you're probably in the Eastern time zone. If you are more around, I think I've been talking for too long. So near the Washington state, what's the corresponding state in Canada? If you're in Vancouver, you're in the Pacific time zone. Yes, at Eastern is 10 a.m. Divya says, Is GMAT a good option for executive MBAs? Is there a difference with regards to the criteria? So, executive MBA is in the US. I'm going to talk about executive MBA in the US because in India, an executive MBA means very different. So, in executive MBA in the US, the GMAT score is about 20 to 30. The expectation of GMAT score is about 20 to 30 points lower than that for a full time MBA. Why? Because if you're doing an executive MBA, first of all, your company is sponsored most of the times, which means that your company is backing you. And the second thing is you bring in a lot of other business skills. That's kind of the whole assumption when you do an executive MBA. If you don't bring in those business skills, then you probably won't be accepted in that executive MBA, regardless of this. So, for example, I was talking to the dean of Wharton's executive MBA in San Francisco a couple of years ago, and what she said is that, hey, uh, 80% of their candidates are company sponsored, and the other 20% work in startups. If they're not company sponsored, they work in startups where they get enough money, but even then they require a commitment from their boss. So they would interview the candidate's boss to make sure that the boss would certify that for the next 2 years this guy would be working at 80% capacity so that he or she can finish her executive MBA. So yeah, GMAT's a good option. You can also take the executive the form uh, the the form of GMAT which is there for executive MBAs. But yeah, either one would work. But there are these other things which are also very important. Tom says, I don't have experience being employed, but working as a freelance stock trader. I've been working for a particular company ever since I started this job. Early 30 years, GPAs, a good GPA, 3 years of work experience. Um, Tom, here's something that I'll tell you. So I've not seen that experience because I don't see a ton of. We don't do admissions consulting, so we don't see a lot. But I can really recommend you to a few people. But here's something that I'll tell you in principle what B schools look for when they say you need to have professional experience. They look for your ability to interact with people, and how you work with people. Why? Because in business you work with people. So even when you've been working as a freelance stock trader, you must have customers. If you're just, using your money, then probably that's not going to be as useful. But if you're working with other individuals and if you've worked with them for a fairly long time, then this starts to get counted as a full-time work experience where they can vouch for not your technical skills, but your ability to work with other people. So. Ivana says, I'm a professional athlete. I'm 26. I'm reconsidering to change my career. I have a bachelor's degree in economics with an average GPA. She says, however, I'm very passionate about finance, specifically investment banking. Do I have the possibility to get into a good master's with a high GMAT score? Ivana, so great question. A lot of people, what you're talking about is what we call as a classical major career change. I mean, I did a major career change. A lot of people do that. And and you say you're passionate about finance. I think if you can demonstrate that passion through something, and then if you have a high GMAT score, then definitely. Why? Because the fact that you're a professional athlete is really helpful. Why? Because professional athletes are people who are very motivated. They don't give up easily. So there is that addition. There is that pro that you already have. But what you need is that evidence that. That you're passionate about finance. Have you taken any finance courses? Have you done a CFA or a CPA? I mean, there's anything that tells uh, the admissions committee that you're passionate about finance. If you have a few of those things, then yes, you can overall. So for you, that passionate piece would help you with that interesting would address that career transition piece, and then as a professional athlete, the recommendation from your coach, your professional achievements will tell you how tenacious you are, and that along with a good GMAT score should be a good combination. But if you don't have a CFA, if you've not done any of the HBX courses, then I would recommend that you do those. So Havana, hopefully that helps. Um, Shankar says, do you recommend verbal first in quant for people for whom quant is your strength? No, I recommend just the opposite. If quant's your strength, start with quant first, get done with it. That way you have your mind share is all devoted to verbal. What about executive MBA and the IIM? So an executive MBA in India, and I'm not disparaging it, but it's kind of an executive MBA from an IIM is like is actually a full-time MBA for working professionals with 5 years of experience. So that's kind of pretty much the same as a full-time MBA, and that's what it should be considered. So it's called an executive MBA because they want to make you feel good about it. But if you really compare the MBA, that's a full-time MBA over there. And if you want to go to an IIM to do the equivalent of a full-time MBA rather than going to an ISB, then yes, definitely do that. Take the GMAT. We have lots and lots of students. I can really dig some of them out who've done that and they've been happy about it. So yeah, but it's not the same as what the executive MBA is supposed to be. It's really a full-time MBA. Rajwan says, which one's easy, the GMAT or the GRE? I mean, I like the GMAT more than the GRE, but again, if you are really strong in vocab and if you're not strong in quant, the GRE may be a better deal for you. Um, so yeah, that's something that I would say. If you Google GMAT versus GRE, you'd really actually get an article by us in which we compare that. So Dinesh, I've answered your question. Executive MBA from IIM. Let's see, I think a couple of more questions. Carolina says, work for a certain period of time and everybody. Okay. Manoj says, I'm 21. I just started my work and I already started with my GMAT for. I'm looking to apply after 2 years. The only thing that I worry about is my GPA is around 3, but with a high score, can I expect to get into these schools? So yeah, so high GMAT score can really mitigate a low GPA, but you also need consistent work experience. So when you think about GPA, what GPA represents is consistency, and if you can demonstrate that consistency through another means, GMAT's one means, your work experience is another means, then yes, it will mitigate that low GPA piece over here. You might have to write an optional essay, but if you have these two other things as proof, you're going to mitigate that concern over there. One thing you have to recognize is for US and Canadian business schools, and even for European, we don't really have a scoring system over here where we say, hey, your GPA gets these many points, your GMAT gets these many points, and your experience gets these many points. And even in fact, even the ISB doesn't have that. We are looking for evidence of excellence, and if you see 2 or 3 places where we see evidence of excellence, then yes, we believe you're a good candidate, which again is very different from the way you get an admission into a full-time MBA at IIMs or Jamna Lal Bajaj. Why? Because you have these categories which have different weights, which means if you screw up your GPA, you can never recover from it. So yeah. Paridhi says, and Paridhi is someone who's a tax consultant, says, what career choices will you get post MBA? Paridhi, you can transition into whatever you want. It's about what your passion is. I mean, for example, if you get into ISB, I'm sure you can get into marketing, you can get into finance, you can get into product management. It's what you work towards during your tenure at ISB. I mean, we've had students who, for example, just I think, but some time back I was talking to a former student who who worked for Reuters as a newsroom reporter. So literally, I mean, she'd see her on TV. She's one of those people for Reuters, and then post her MBA from ISB, she is now a brand manager. Similarly, another former student who actually was a sales guy is now leading a business unit within a certain organization. So I mean, those career transitions happen, especially in India. All right, guys. With that, I want to thank everyone for joining me today. It was a pleasure having you here. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this session. Once again, as next steps, get that personalized study plan. Just take a look at the free trial. If you're an e-GMAT student, make sure you understand how to execute on your study plan, and just stay motivated towards getting that high GMAT score. We wish you good luck, and I look forward to seeing you on egmat.com.